Now comes the interesting part. So the handle will be quite challenging. So we just talked about curvature, continuous surfaces, and then curves. And what you see here are three cylinders converging into one center part. And this is quite the challenge to model correctly, or, well, depends on what correct means to you. But as you can see here, we have an issue in this model. There is this highlight, this three-sided highlight. This is completely flat, and you might be able to pick up on this issue on a few of those pictures. So here you can see this three-sided angled highlight as well, and this one, there's the same thing happening. So we can either model this the original way or a different way in order to prevent this highlight to happen. So I'm just showing you how they did it and then show you a second version on how to prevent this highlight. So let's go into Rhino, go to the side view. We need to draw the main sketch. So I'm going to curve tools and just measure roughly how big or how much the diameter is. So I think it says 23 millimeters. So that's what we are going to use. Next, we can just create a single line, and there's many ways to do this, but I'm just creating one line. Now I'm using the pipe tool again, hit pipe, and make sure that the cap is off. So we don't want to have a cap, we want to open cylinder and type in 11.5 for the radius for both sides. Hit enter a few times in order to accept, and now this is our main cylinder. So with this one sticking out here, we can continue to work. So the front view, I'm just hitting Alt and click and drag the gumball in order to make a copy of this element. And this is the quick and dirty way. You can, of course, create this really nicely. But here I'm just basically aligning this old cylinder with the angle of the sketch. So here I want grid snap off in order to align this properly. And then without holding shift, you can extend the length of the cylinder. So this is basically just the quickest way for me to do it. Of course, you are free to use your own way if it's more comfortable for you. But for me, this works quite well. So I'm just making a few copies here and aligning them really, really roughly. And I want them to end wherever the transition starts. So actually, this one is quite small. So I'm trying to stop wherever the transition here starts. So that's it for now. The next step is to create halves of these cylinders. So right now we have one element. In order to do this, go back to the side view and hit the line tool again. And we need to make some cuts. So click here in the center, both sides, overextend, and click the cylinder, go to split, and click the new line in order to split this cylinder into two parts. So here you can see in the perspective, we now have two elements, and this is what we need to do for all of those. So again, line, I'm going to the center. If you want to align in this arbitrary angle, just find the this axis here, this projected line, and then if you hit tab, it just constrains it to the selected angle. And I'm overextending again, clicking the cylinder, click split, and splitting this guy in half. Same thing with this. It's again split and split with this line. And now we have two halves of each of those cylinders. Next, I want to go to Surface Tools and go up here to the Blend Surface tool and just blend in those elements. And of course, I want it to be curvature, so hit curvature. We don't want to change anything right now. It should be fine. And you will see where this leads. So now we have this triangle that will also show up here in our images. So the last step now is to go to the surface from Planar Curves tool and select these three and do the same thing on the other side as well. And now we want to select all of our newly created surfaces and hit join. So this is now one element. And in order to see what we just did and also highlight the differences between this approach and another one, you can go up here to the curvature analysis. And I like to use the environment map. So hit environment map, and this just gives you some sort of reflection that you can look at. So here you can clearly see this flat triangle that is created. So this is perfect if you want to go for the real way this is created. But I want to show you two more approaches that you can tackle this problem. For the first one, I'm going to just hide everything that I don't need. So for example, the kettle itself, and we can just create a new layer, call it kettle, and use our selection tool to change the object layer. Now we are just working with the handle. So what I'm doing is holding Alt again, clicking, and just moving this guy and copying it over to the side. So we have our original, and then another one that we now work with. So now what we want to do is use this as a base and change a few things in order to create a more seamless blend. So this approach won't work perfectly, I can tell you now, but we'll have a third one that's also possible to use. So first is I'm going to explode these into their separate surfaces. Then I'm going to delete those inner parts. We don't need those. So next, we still need the halves, but we need to rotate them 90 degrees so the splits are along the x-axis. Same goes with those. Here we don't have any correct way to rotate them. So go to the rotate tool, and we need to rotate 3D. So right click on the rotate tool in order to rotate 3D. Be sure to uncheck project. I have project on, and then hit the axis that we created before, and then rotate it 90. So type in 90, enter, and this rotates it so the split is again in the center. Same for this one down here. So right click, rotate, select the axis, 90, enter, and that rotates it. Next, we want to split this half in two elements. So right click on the split surface and then split it somewhere arbitrary between those halves. So I think this should be fine. And then do the same thing along the line. So split this blend again at the same point, hit right click and this one as well. Then go up here, split this one and this one. And then here we need to have a new split. So as well here, let's uncheck center, somewhere here, enter, and then again at the same point along the right. So now we split this thing a few times. And this allows us to create a bigger hole where we have a few already correct surfaces that we can now use to patch this hole. So just go to the surface tools and select patch, and then select all of those edges here, right click, then just have the standard selections here. So this creates a patch and it looks quite okay. So this is not the perfect way to do it. And if we look at the reflections, you will see why it doesn't. So just join those together. So it looks fine from far away, but as soon as you zoom in, you will have some artifacts that are popping up. But for general use, this could be fine. And of course, we want to copy this over to the other side. In order to do this, just explode again. We need to cut those guys in half as well. So here a few cuts, and then select this wrong side here, delete, and we're gonna mirror this thing over to the other side. So go to the transform tab and over to mirror, and then mirror it along the x-axis. So now we can join these surfaces together. And if I click join, you will see that this surface that we created, this patch, doesn't really want to join. This is exactly also showing the issue with this approach. So it's not perfectly aligned with these edges. It looks like it does, but it really isn't. but we can force it to connect with the rest. In order to do this, we need to go to Surface Tools, and on the Show Edges cascading toolbar here, we have something called Join Two Naked Edges. You can also click and drag this out in order to have it ready. And if we want to see those edges, we can select all of those and go here to Show Edges. We need to select two naked edges, and this basically tells us where there's an issue with connection. So these two surfaces don't really want to connect. Now we want to force them to do. So click on Join Two Naked Edges and then hit those three edges twice. So go once or for the first selection and then twice, and then select yes. Same thing on the other side. So you can see this is now one element. And again, with the cap tool, just type in CAP, we can close all these holes. And it's the same thing with this guy. And this creates a closed volume. All right, this looks fine. This is acceptable for, like design proposals, models that don't really need to be as detailed as others. But now in Rhino 7, we have another tool, which is the subdivision tools. And this is quite interesting and new and helps a lot. It does this job much, much quicker. So go to the side view again. We want to move these guys out of the way. So just move them to the right. And here's our sketch from before. So this one is wrong, but the rest is actually correct. We can overextend those as well. So just scale those up a little bit in order to create a center point, but we need one center point. So just move one of those guys to the center and move the other one as well. So those meet exactly in one point. Make sure that these are still in one plane. And now make sure that we don't overbuild. To also move this point lower in order to meet the sketch. So go to the Move tool along this line. And I think we end here. Same here. And this we can overextend. So this should be fine. All right, next we go to the subdivision tools, and you can see if you look closely, we have exactly the perfect tool for that. It's called subdivision multi-pipe. And if we click that, it needs some curves to pipe. So we select all of three curves, enter. And now we want to have the pipe radius, and we had 11.5 the last time. So hit enter twice. Thread divisions is set to 1 and hit enter. And already we have an almost perfect handle, but we need to tweak it a little bit. So again, I'm going to the side view. And if you're not yet familiar with the subdivision tools, I don't want to go into detail, but it is basically a polygon modeling workflow inside Rhino with subdivision. So it's really easy to create perfectly organic flowing surfaces. So the only two things that we need here are the Insert Subdivision Edge Loop tool and also the Slide Subdivision Edges loop tool. So first we want to add some loops. So select the Insert Loop tool, and then we want to select this loop with double click, right click, and then set the start of this transition right around here, and then select right click again to do the same thing down here, double click, enter, and then move this one up. Maybe we can even slide this edge here. So double click this, right click, and just move it up a little bit, maybe to have a softer transition here. So right click, close the selection. And if we look and take a look at the perspective, we have basically a perfect handle for our kettle. So now we can have a look at the differences. So just select all of those handles that we just created. If we go to Surface Tools and Curvature Analysis, Environment Map, you can see what the difference is. So here we have this triangular highlight that we really don't want, except if we do. And I think those two look quite good. These highlights or these reflections work better for me. And then if you zoom in, you don't have any artifacts. So on this one, we have some edges that are shown, and the subdivision model is perfect. So this is perfectly curvature continuous throughout the whole handle. So this one for me works best. A few tweaks we need to do for this one are apparent if we go to the top view. You can see that it bulges out. So this is one of those drawbacks. Of course, you can use it for design models, but for final production surfaces, it's not meant to be. So you can see the first one that we created with the flat sides doesn't have this bulge. The one with the patch surface does have the bulge, but since we are still in the subdivision tools, we can just tweak this a little bit. In order to do this, we can select it, toggle subdivision display. You can see that the actual model that it subdivides is made of basically quad shapes. And in order to tweak it a little bit, I want to subdivide this model. So hit subdivide subdivision. Here you can see from the top that the bulge is now visible. If we now go to standard and show control points, we can just take those two rogue points and move them inwards. So it will not delete the bulge entirely. If we toggle subdivision again, you can see the bulge is much smaller, and it's not as apparent. All right, so then the last step now is to create surfaces, real surfaces from the subdivision element. And here is the convert objects to NURBS tool. So hit that once and hit right click. So this is now a NURBS surface part. And similar with the other ones, we can also hit cap in order to cap those open parts. So depending on which is your favorite, I'll just hide those two, and then work with the sub D one. Now we need a few more tweaks, and then we're ready to render. So this is a two-part video. I will show the render scene in a future video. This is now just concentrating on the CAD model, and in order to make it ready for your own render. So we have two cuts here that are not yet modeled. So we have this metal part and also a cap on the lower hand side. In order to create those parting lines, make sure that project is on. So we create planar lines in our XZ plane. Go to curve tools, and I'm going to create a single line here, and then offsetting this to the side as well with a flat cap and 0.2 millimeter thickness. And the same thing for this line here. In order to make this cut perpendicular to this arbitrary angle, I'll just select this midpoint here, hit B in order to create a line from the center, and then I highlight another point on the right edge, and then hit tab in order to constrain this line again. So this I'm using all the time. It's a really good habit to go into. I hope you'll find it useful. And now we want to move this guy along this axis to the right point and offset this as well. And then I can select both of them and go to surface, extrude straight, and be sure to hit solid yes, and also make sure that both sides are selected. And we can overextend this in order to make sure that our cutting works. So in the perspective mode, I'm selecting the handle, go to solid tools and Boolean difference, select both of those cutting elements, right click. This should create our parting lines. So two more things. We need to fillet all these edges, and also we need to cut this in the right length. So in order to do this, we need to create an offset of this surface. So we are going to right click on explode, which is extract surface. So right click on explode means I can select this surface and it will extract it from the joint model. But also I can click on copy yes to create a copy of this surface. So now this original part is not changed, And I have this copy of the whole surface. So now I can use this as a cutting element. So in the surface tools, I'm also going to offset this for 0.2 millimeters, similar to what we just had with these cutting lines. So right click to offset and then select this metal part, go to solid tools again, Boolean difference, and select our newly created poly surface. And this creates the cut. We need to just deselect the original one that we want to keep and then delete the one that we don't want to keep. Now we have a perfect cut width, which also is offset for 0.2 millimeters in order to create this realistic parting line. And while we are here in the solid tools, we can also just fillet all our edges, just hiding the underlay here. So fillet edges. If I hit C, enter, I can chain those edges. If I hit enter, C, enter, I can select another one. Enter, C, enter another one, enter, C, enter another one, enter, C, enter another one. And this just selects all of my edges that I want to fillet. So here in the metal part can have a smaller radius, so 0.2. Hit C, enter, hit enter, C, enter, and we are creating this nice crisp edge here. All right, that is it for the modeling. I'm just selecting all these curves, right click, change the object layer to my curve layer. I don't need those other layers. I can just delete them. And as I said in the beginning, somewhere as the last part, I want to structure my model. So what I do is I create a bunch of sublayers. So go to the kettle layer, sublayer. We want to have body. We want to have lid. We want to have base. We also have a handle. And we have a knob. And we have a metal part, connection part. And now I'll just click on the part that I want to move, right click on body, change the object layer. We have a lid, right click, change object layer. We have the knob, right click, and the handle, metal part, and the base. And of course, we can have some sublayers as well. So we can move the knob into the lid. We can also move the metal connection part into the handle. So now we can take on and off these elements. And the good thing is if you just hit send to KeyShot, you will have all these layers in KeyShot as well. So this just makes it much easier to create and assign materials. And yeah, so this is my basic workflow for Rhino. There's a lot more that I didn't get into. Of course, it's very detailed and we didn't manage to model the lower part, the base part, but it's fairly basic and I hope you can manage with all the tools that you just learned. I hope you learned a few things along the way. Feel free to ask questions down in the comment section. I hope to get to them, or visit my Instagram and also you can DM me there. The link for that is in the description as well. And as I said in the beginning, I will upload this finished model on my website. The link is down in the description as well. And for more videos like this or other design related videos, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn the notifications on so you won't miss a video. I'm super excited to keep creating those videos. It seems that it helps you guys a lot and that makes me motivated in turn. So thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for sticking with me through this video and I'll see you in the next video.